JLBWHO here, and today we are working on a face-off video, a new video series where I take two things in Doctor Who and compare them, or basically talk about which one I prefer and why. This, of course, was one of the polls that went up for you guys to vote on a few days ago from when I'm recording this. Actually, like a day yesterday from when I'm recording this. And the question was, which do you prefer, or which do you think is better? Actually, season 16 or season 17. So first I'll talk about my thoughts, and then we'll talk about the poll results and maybe some of the comments that were down in the comment section. Now, between these two, having finally seen all of season 17, now that the season 17 box set is out, I can say I prefer season 17. Now, I like all of Tom Baker's seasons. I don't think he has a bad season. I like all of his seasons, and I think all of his seasons have some good stories in them. Season 16, the Key to Time season, is my least favorite of his. Now, I love the fact it tries to do a seasonal arc in the 70s, which is a rarity, and it pulls it off decently for the time, because the arc is kind of loose, let's be honest. I think of them more as individual stories with a seasonal arc than as one story like Flux. I think it pulls it off well for the time, especially considering, that's a rarity for back then. Now, it has two stories in it I flat out love, and I'm getting more and more to where I consider classics, even if they're not officially classics, and that's Pirate Planet and the Ribos Operation. Rebus, I always do that. I love both of those stories. They are the top two for me. Pirate Planet is just Douglas Adams and Tom Baker meshing so well together, which is one of the reasons why I prefer season 17. We'll get to that. I like Pirate Planet. I love that some of the film elements for it survive, so the location work looks gorgeous. Tom has some great lines in it. I love the captain in it. I love the story. It's actually a pretty dark story. Ribos Operation is a lot like, not Ribos Operation, Pirate Planet's kind of like season 24, Sylvester McCoy's first season. It's actually some pretty dark material with some kind of happy camp thrown in to lighten it up. And some people can't see past the happy camp, much like in season 24. And you look at Paradise Towers, that's a pretty dark damn story if you look at the actual subject matter. It's the same way with Pirate Planet. When you look at the subject matter of a planet that is basically a vampire planet that kills other planets and anyone on them. I mean, the next planet they were going to was Earth. And then you look at the thing that the captain has created down in his little science room or whatever, and you realize the scale and magnitude of it. That's some pretty dark, heavy stuff that can get lost in the campiness of the way the story is portrayed, the overacting of the captain, etc., etc., etc. But it's actually a really good story. And again, I like the Ribos Operation. I think it's really good. I love... one thing I will give season 16 over 17 is I do prefer Mary Tam as Romana. I've always liked Romana 1 better than Romana 2. And I love Mary Tam and Ribos. When she first meets the Doctor in the TARDIS, the scene when they first exit the TARDIS is just gold. I really like the guy playing the Grath Vindicay. He is great. I think he does a good job of playing the character as someone who is truly a bad person, but sees himself as a really good person. It's like he's so oblivious he doesn't realize he's a prick. He thinks he's like this benevolent ruler, and he can't understand why his brother took the throne in his place, where it's very obvious he's a terrible person. I think that comes across really well, and that's down to the writing and to the actor's portrayal. There's a lot going on I like it. Stones of Blood is half and half. There's stuff I don't like about Stones of Blood, but there's stuff I really like about Stones of Blood. Androids of Terra is an interesting one, and I have to give a little shout out to it because Androids of Terra is partly responsible for me coming up with this video idea, this face-off idea, because it was a comparison I wanted to do, and one of the things involved was Androids of Terra. And the only reason I didn't do that one first is I really need to re-watch that story, because I've watched it twice. The first time I watched it, it was one of my favorite stories of the season. The second time I watched it, I didn't really care for it. To have two so drastically different opinions of the same story, having only watched them a few years apart, is very interesting to me. And I really need to give it a third watch just to see where my opinion will fall of it. Although I think my biggest problem with it is I don't like how Romana is treated in this story. The damsel in distress getting captured and rescued and captured. I could have accepted it from like maybe Joe or somebody, but Romana's a Time Lord, and I feel like she should have been done better, justice more here. I mean, if I ever found out that one of the reasons Mary Tam decided to leave was is how she was portrayed in this story, I would completely understand. Plus, Mary had to play 4 characters in this story. 4 characters in this story. Because she's playing Romana, she's playing the princess, she's playing the android disguised as the princess, and she's playing the android disguised as Romana. It's pretty impressive stuff. And then, of course, we move on to the next one, The Power of Prowl. I think most of you are aware of how I feel of that story. And that story alone is, I think, the reason that would pull this one down. Because between both seasons, it's the only story I think is actually bad. Well, I mean, objectively bad, maybe not, but just that I don't like. It's the only one that I don't care for personally. I just don't get into that one. And Armageddon Factor, I think, is underrated. It's not perfect. It has flaws. The guy playing the Shadow really overacts. At least with Soul Deeds overacting and horns, it fits in with the rest of the story. The whole story is kind of pantomime camp, so it fits. It works. This story, the Shadow's campiness doesn't quite work with the rest of the story for me. It feels jarring and out of place, and that bothers me. Plus, I never understand why Tom Baker the Fourth Doctor sends all the pieces back, since the White Guardian never actually got the thing to readjust the time. Because that is supposed to be the real White Guardian he meets at the beginning of Ribos operation. So I never understand, the White Guardian never actually gets the key to fix time like he needs to for a second. So, seems like a massive plot hole to me. Though I do enjoy the story, it's nice seeing K9 get reprogrammed and the Doctor figuring it out when K9 calls him Doctor instead of Master. I like that. Doctor? I like that. And then I do like Tom Baker's portrayal at the end, how he kind of does it his own way instead of how the director wanted. I agree with that decision because nobody knows the Fourth Doctor better than Tom Baker. So I think he did that right. And I like I like Lala as Princess Astra. But I do prefer season 17, and a lot of this is down to that sense of humor it has. I think the humor works. One of the reasons I am so fond of the Fourth Doctor is because of season 17's Fourth Doctor. That humor, that wit, the way he does his dialogue, to me that is essential to the Doctor. Even Tennant has stuff he does like that. Well, I say, maybe some of the stuff Tennant does has that kind of randomness, wit to it that I like, and probably one of the reasons I was so endeared with his Doctor for so long as well. But Tom Baker is just perfect. That scene in City of Death when he first meets the Count and the Countess is my favorite scene in all of Doctor Who. Who sent you, Doctor? Who sent me what? Well, why was he following me? Well, you're a beautiful woman, probably. My favorite scene in all of the show. I love that wit and that dialogue. What a wonderful butler. He's so violent. I love that. I live for that. And for me, I think the best Doctors have that kind of wit. And so I think, I don't think there's any screenwriter or script editor that quite clicks with the Fourth Doctor as well. I'm not saying the best one in story writing, because, Robert Holmes is amazing, but just that clicks with the Fourth Doctor character as well. That's why I think Tom Baker and Douglas Adams got on so well, and I think Tom Baker's acting and Douglas Adams' writing and script editing just fit perfectly like a puzzle. Destiny of the Daleks, which I have done a whole video talking about its mediocrity, is still fun to go back and rewatch. I rewatched that story last year on DVD, and I've still already watched the Blu-ray when I watched that the other day, and I watched it with a new surround sound so I could hear the new Davros modulation, which is great. Especially with the updated effects. I like the updated effects, which was originally on the DVD release. It does give the quality of life improvements to the story. I've seen Destiny of the Daleks over half a dozen times. It never gets old, despite not being at the heights of a lot of the other stories. I still find it a fun watch. And maybe it's because it's only 4 parts, so it's not overly long. I still like it. I think the acting in it is good. I like the Movellans. It's not perfect, but I still enjoy it. Of course, City of Death is amazing. Probably my favorite Doctor Who story of all time. The ending on it's not quite perfect, but it's really, really good. I love City of Death. Of course, Shada, my only problem with Shada is I've seen it too many times over the past 4 years, so I'm burning out on it a little bit, but I do think it's Wonderful. Definitely wonderful Douglas Adams writing. I think the animation for it works really well. It has a lot of the humor I like. Did you see that Jinx made them think I was trying to get to the TARDIS? What were you trying to do? Get to the TARDIS. I love that. I live for that. That's the Doctor for me. That is the Doctor. You know about Copernicus? Yes. Oh, you've got a lot to unlearn. I love that. And Horns of Nimon, again, if you go into Horns of Nimon expecting Genesis of the Daleks, you're going to be disappointed. But if you go into Nimon knowing what Nimon is, knowing that it's silly, that it's campy, it's over the top, and you just embrace that and enjoy it for what it is, it's fun. It's great. You know, maybe if I went into Fury from the Deep, just embracing the Scooby-Doo-ness of the animation, I'd love it more. So I'm like that with Horns of Nimon. It's a fun watch. I've watched Horns of Nimon also probably half a dozen times. It doesn't get old to me. I didn't like it the first time I watched it. Let me be honest. I didn't. I hated that story the first time I watched it. The Nimon outfits were so terrible. It is a story that's grown on me. Partially just because I've seen it more. Partially just as I've gotten older and everything doesn't have to be City of Death, Genesis of the Daleks, you know, Seeds of Doom, amazing. I can just accept these filler stories for what they are. You know, Crimson Horror is not going to win any Oscars, but I still think it's great. And then having watched Creature from the Pit and Nightmare of Eden for the first time, I like them. Now, I saw Nightmare for the first time with the updated effects. Maybe that helped a little bit and give it a little more push since the budget does seem to be what a lot of people complain about on that story. I think it has a good message. I like that it takes a show don't tell approach to showing you the dangers of drug use by actually showing it to you and not just giving you a Orphan 55 lecture at the end. I like that. And then Creature from the Pit. I think Creature from the Pit gets robbed. Because I think the only reason it has the bad reputation it does is because of the unfortunate creature design. Which it's not even a problem in most scenes. You have about 3 shots where it's really bad. The very first time you see it, the time when it's got the doctor and the scientist guy down there backed up against the wall and they have to hold the flame under it. And then, of course, that infamous scene of Tom attempting to communicate with it in part 3. I think those are the worst. Most of the other shots of it are just kind of, it's classic Doctor Who budget. It's not quite as bad. The sad thing is I do feel like its entire reputation is based on that, which is sad because there's a great story there. Now, it's still not perfect. The bandits are very frustrating, and I really think they shouldn't have been in there after episode 1 for the most part, because they do truly give an excuse for Lalla Ward to shine as Romana in part 1 when she basically takes control of the situation and forces them to untie her. I love the way she does that. That's really good. And then the guy playing the lead bandit, his acting's not... But then you have, like, Myra Francis. My God, is she just amazing in that role. I really enjoyed watching her. There is just something about watching her on the screen. She has this sexuality to her that usually doesn't quite catch my eye the way it does with her. She can arch an eyebrow, and I'm just like, wow. An astounding woman and a fantastic performance. And then the woman who plays the older woman in it, too. She also played in An Unearthly Child, I know. Someone had pointed that out to me in the comments before. She's in An Unearthly Child. She's great in it, too. Most of the other guest performances I enjoy. Even the guy playing the handler of the weed things, I like him in it. So I enjoyed that. And then there are those 7 minutes I've raved about before, the first 7 minutes or so of part 4, when Tom Baker really gets to do, I think, quite possibly the most underrated scene in his entire run of Doctor Who. Because I've never heard anybody talk about this scene, ever. Ever. And it's a masterpiece. I love it. And there's nothing here but weeds, weeds, farce, and weeds! I love that. This rantings of this pathetic woman. I love Tom Baker in this. I've watched that scene probably 7 or 8 times. I mean, I love that scene. Those 7 minutes are just gold. Masterpiece Doctor Who. If I had to pick the most underrated moment of the 4th Doctor's era, that could be it. I love those 7 minutes. And then with the lady Adrista, she has this weird name that I can spell and can't pronounce. It's a stupid pronunciation. Whatever. But when she dies like 7 minutes into the episode, you still have the rest of part 4 to go. I was like, wait, what? I didn't know where the story was going to go. So it's fascinating to see how the story developed after what I considered to be the main villain was gone. And, wondering whether the creature from the pit was good, was it really bad, seeing where that went. That was neat. I enjoyed that. The story took an unexpected twist I didn't expect from one of the worst stories of Tom Baker's era, and I was fascinated by it. It is one of, I think, the Fourth Doctor's most underrated stories. Although I think Nightmare of Eden's underrated as well. So between the two, I do prefer season 17. I think the humor works. It fits Tom Baker's Doctor perfectly. And it's very obvious Tom Baker and Lalla Ward have very good chemistry, obviously. And they're great when they're on screen together. It's a lot of fun. So let's have a look now at kind of the poll results. I think it's been running for probably about 24 hours now. Let's see. We have had 97 votes. And the three options were, so overall, which season of the Fourth Doctor era is better, season 16 or 17? And 41% said season 16, 48% said 17, and 10% said they're both weak. So at least right now, season 17 is slightly winning, which is interesting because the poll has went back and forth. I've watched. The first time, like early on, 17 had a pretty good lead, but then there was a while where 16 had a lead. Now it looks like 17 is winning slightly. Season 16 has 41%. Season 17 has 48%. But neither of them have hit the 50% mark, with 10% saying they're both weak. Couple of the comments. Bananas are good. A longtime subscriber said, both are easily Tom's weakest, but they both have enjoyable parts and real lows. Fair enough. But I prefer 16. I like the story arc of the mission to find all the segments to the Keys of Time, even though it goes absolutely nowhere. Which is fair, because the White Guardian never gets it to fix anything. They spend all that time gathering them just for him to separate them again. That's fair. I agree with that. Alice, who is not only one of my subscribers, but one of my patrons as well. Hey, Alice. She says, Key to Time is definitely preferred by me over Season 17. Honestly, I think Season 17 may be his weakest season, to be honest. Fair enough. I'm curious why you think it's his weakest. Steven says, I think Season 16 is the most consistent, but Season 17 has higher highs and lower lows. I have heard other people say this as well, and that was definitely with the reputation Creature, Naimon, and Nightmare have. I could see a lot of people having that point of view of Season 16 being kind of the middle ground and only going like this, where Season 17, the stories tend to either be really good or really bad. With a long time, I think really City of Death kind of bolstering it from being utterly bad in a lot of people's eyes. I think a lot of people seem to think Destiny is kind of middle, City is good, the next three are bad, and then again, Shauna wasn't released for so long, there really wasn't a thought on it, and the thoughts on it seem to vary from person to person now. So I agree with that. Dom, who has, for Dom, actually, a short one. Hello, Dom. It's good to see you. I hadn't seen Dom in a minute. It's good to see him back. He said, I like Season 17 quite a lot overall, but I think when you get down to it, 16 only really has one properly bad story, and the rest are all ones I either enjoy or really like. That said, the bad story is Power of Krull, so that's a pretty big negative. Boy, if there's ever a sentence in the comment section I'll agree with. Still, though, despite Shada, Eden, City of Death, I just more consistently enjoy 16 and 17. Fair enough. And then he goes on to talk some about 18, because his favorite season of Tom Baker's era is 18. That's a controversial opinion. However, I am someone who also finds Season 18 very underrated. And you will see the Season 18 the subject of an upcoming face-off as well. Cyber Smoker says, as someone who's binging the classics for the first time and finished the Williams era a month ago, I honestly hate both of them. That's not very fair. I want to know what your thoughts on City of Death is. Also, sometimes Season 17, I think stories can take a while to grow on people. Destiny took a while to grow on me, and so did Naimon. Part of that just could be my age. And it's nothing compared to Season 15, but a lot is left to be desired. And then he went on to choose Season 17 over 16 because it has two good stories, City of Death and Shada, compared to Season 16, which he says only has one, which is Stones of Blood, which isn't even my favorite of the season. I prefer Ribos Operation and Pirate Planet. Destiny says Destiny is a frustrating sequel to Genesis and the absolute low of Davros's characterization. Fair. Nightmare tries to tackle some serious issues but treats them like a joke on top of being technobabble. I don't agree with that. I don't think it treats joke stuff as a joke. I don't agree with that. I think The Horns of Nimon is bad because of Crowden's hysterical performance. It was bad because it was dull and not hysterical enough. I don't agree with that either, because every time I watch Horns of Nimon, I laugh my ass off. I do. I laugh every time I watch that story. And the Creature from the Pit is fine, besides the one joke and the paper-thin supporting cast. Although Myra's great in it. But it's nice to see he appreciates Creature. It is good. Ham, longtime subscriber, also says easily 17, I'd say. I agree. Hondo says season 16. And Jacob says that he prefers Romana 1 over Romana 2. I've always wondered, why do we call them Romana 1 and Romana 2 instead of the first Romana and the second Romana? Like, we don't call Tom Baker Dr. 4. You ever notice that? It's like, with the Doctor, it's the second Doctor, the third Doctor, the fourth Doctor. But with Romana, it's Romana 1 and Romana 2, not the first Romana, the second Romana. I don't know why. I don't know why that bothers me slightly, but it does. So, and that is the comments on that. And that's kind of how these face-off videos are going to go. I'll give my opinion, and then we'll look at the poll results, and I'll read over some of the comments in the comments section. So, between Season 16 and Season 17, I do prefer 17, as I do think 16 is Tom's weakest season. I would like to know what you have thought of this video, and what you think of this video series, and kind of how it went, what you thought of everything. So comment down below and let me know. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications, so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you like what I do and would like to support what I do. There is a link to that down in the description as well. My entry-level tier is only $2 a month. I want to give a shout out to two of my top tier patrons, the 5th Doctor and Stephen Crane. I very much appreciate their continued support, just as I appreciate the support of all of my patrons. And I also have a P.O. box. If there's anything Doctor Who related, that is down in the description as well. So if there's anything Doctor Who related you'd like to send me, I should say, that's down in the description. And a link to my Amazon wish list as well. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.